Is there something that you go to when you check for film that you ask the actors to say or do?
Yeah, I usually, when I mic them up, I'll tell them what they had for breakfast.
Nice.
But some of them will be like, I had coffee or I had
That's
a sandwich.
helpful.
Yeah. And so I'll ask them like, what's your favorite city or what's your favorite thing about Miami, so that I can get them talking for like a minute. And then I'll get the levels roughly.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
given that we already started, why don't you introduce yourself?
So my name is Dan Abrusci, and I do sound for a living.
You're listening to Miami Film Labs, Crew Call 305.
Crew Call 305, making a living as a filmmaker.
My company, which is Loyal Sound, takes care of the whole sound department. So from recording on set to doing Foley sound design, I work with great sound engineers, and we basically adapt to clients' needs. So for some people, we just record. For some people, we get to do everything, but we can take care of the whole sound department.
And what do you do more of? Do you do more on set or more of the post sound work, or a little bit of everything?
It's like seasonal. Mm-hmm. So like these past couple months, I've had a lot of post. We're actually finishing a feature film right now, lots of short documentaries as well. But it really changes depending on the time of the year. Yeah.
Interesting. So what's the set time of the year for you?
I mean, sometimes, in summer it gets a little slow and then it's a lot of post. But it's crazy because like sometimes it'll be, slow and then we get 3-4 bookings on the same day. So
The joys of freelancing.
And I do have, thankfully, I have a small team and we can do that. Like, we can cover multiple sets on the same day. Yeah.
Nice. So let's go back. So what brought you to sound? How did you decide to pick that?
So I've been playing drums since I was 4 years old.
Nice.
And when I started buying records, back in the day, we had something called CDs. So I used to buy them and then go and like read the credits. And I realized that there was something called a mixing engineer, which was the person, there's a recording engineer and a mixing engineer. So that to me, was fascinating. The fact that someone was recording. I played in bands most of my, teenager years. And so like, we started recording with whatever we had at the time. And for me, it was always clear, like I need to do sound. But in Venezuela, you couldn't study it. So I had to figure out a way to study sound. And so when I graduated high school, I basically started working in a rehearsal space that had a recording studio on top. But I didn't have any audio experience. So working in the rehearsal space, because I had been playing in bands, I kind of had a little bit of an idea of, like how to connect the guitars and whatnot to the amps. And so I learned there. And then there was a guy that had a recording studio and he was doing Pro Tools trainings, which is the software that they normally use in studios. So I tried to get an internship at a studio and they told me like, we can't because you don't know how to use Pro Tools and like we're really busy. So you kind of need to know the software. So I realized that I need to learn this software. And I did the training at the studio. It was the first class that they were doing. They had 4 iMacs and then the recording studio on the side. And I did that. And my instructor, the owner of the studio, was working on a TV show at the time. So after I did the 4 months, he ended up hiring me to work on the show. Yeah, and so I started, like fixing, editing dialogue a little bit, getting to learn the art of TV production. And I did that for maybe like a year. And then I moved to Nashville and studied audio engineering.
And what took you to Nashville?
So there was an institute called SAE. There is an institute called SAE that they have like Nashville. They have one in Miami. They have New York, LA. But I thought since Nashville is Music City, it's probably going to be a good, like that place where the school is. It's called Music Row. All of that avenue is like recording studios. So that to me seemed very fascinating and probably a good place to study. And unfortunately at the times, piracy was happening. So you kind of had to be insane to study audio because studios were closing left and right because the music industry was dead, right? And so the only way out was either post-production or touring. Yeah, but then, Spotify came and iTunes and streaming, and now it's changed completely.
Well, given that you started in music, but also kind of cut your teeth in TV, when did you decide between film and kind of media post versus music?
So when I was in school, I was like, because I knew the industry was really hard. And so I thought to myself, if I can work in sound, just in sound, I'm going to be happy. It doesn't have to be music. But when I graduated, I got the option to do an internship here in Miami in a studio. At the time, it was called Up Tempo. It was basically like an ad agency, and then they did a bunch of commercials, which, at the time, commercials were doing really good. And so I did an internship there with one of my mentors, Ricardo Tinoco, and I basically learned, the art of sound designing. I remember when I graduated, I was like, I feel really comfortable with Pro Tools. And then I sit with him the first day, and watching him work, like he wouldn't touch the mouse. It was just the keyboard, and he would sound design a spot in like nothing, like half hour, 40 minutes, but like really good sound design. And when I watched him work, I was like, fuck, I don't know anything. It was very intimidating, but he was super cool. And, up to this day, I still call him, and we nerd about audio and, sessions, and he's awesome. Yeah. I've been thankful all my career that I've had great mentors, because I feel like I'm at the point right now where I am is because of the people that I've gotten to work with that have always opened the doors. And just watching them work, watching people work on set, I learn. The DPs that I watch, I kind of learn a little bit about how to light a scene. And you just got to stay curious, I feel.
Yeah. Do you feel like enough people are curious like that? I feel like a lot of people think they know more and aren't as absorbing on set as kind of our generation of people were when we were coming up. Like, I want to learn all the things.
Yeah. I feel like this generation is more shy. Like I would bother people and be like, hey, can I go to a studio? Can I go to a studio? In that sense, I feel like kids nowadays are like more reserved. And maybe it's because, I don't know, maybe they're afraid of asking and getting a rejection. But, you can't be afraid of failing in this industry, I feel. If you're afraid of failing, you're closing your own doors.
Yeah, because you're going to fail all the time.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we do.
How did we meet? I texted you.
Yeah.
I didn't know you at all. And I was like, hey, I like what you do. Can I get my short film on, your platform?
Yep.
And you could have said no, but I tried. And 2 years later, here we are.
I mean, that's how Miami Film Lab started.
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to control my schedule and life more. And I think that there aren't enough opportunities for filmmakers. So I just started calling people being like, if I do this thing, would you help me? And they did. And now it's 2 years later and we have, this lovely organization.
So you started 2 years ago?
In 2021, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you had been doing it longer.
Well, no, I mean, I've been filmmaking for 15 years or so I graduated college in 2007.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this a while, but Miami
cool.
Film Lab is a baby.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you've done a lot of great stuff in 2 years, which is, really hard.
You're in Miami. What made you fall in love with Miami and kind of call Miami home?
So I like the fact that I can find Venezuelan empanadas pretty much in every corner. That's pretty strong point. But realistically, like, I don't know, Miami's home. To me, Miami's home. I know that there's better industries in LA, New York, Georgia, potentially. But I like the people that I work with here. I like the people that I collaborate. I like the weather. Miami's like, there's a little bit of chaos here and there. Nothing's, too perfect, which, I like that too. It's,
Same.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's growing every year. I feel like it grows a little bit more, and we're here, and we might as well just make our place grow, right?
Yeah. And so how are you finding jobs in Miami? Like, how did you go from freelancing to starting Loyal Sound, and like what projects are coming your way?
Yeah, I mean, realistically nowadays, most of my work is word of mouth.
Nice.
So people that contact me through people that I already did work for. But I'd say at least I work a lot with WEG, and I knew them because we teach at the same university. I've known Eddie and Kevin and Ron at least for like 8-9 years. And so, like, you just I feel like you gotta go out. I didn't really do this much a couple of years ago, but you got to go out and meet people. You know, you got to go to events, you got to go to film festivals. And that's the best way, you know, even if you're new in town, I would still do that. You know, I would go out and talk to people.
So what kind of projects, I don't, for people who don't know, WEG is the White Elephant Group. They do a lot of personal projects, like narratives.
Yeah.
So are you mostly doing narratives? Are you mostly doing commercials, features? What are your projects?
It's like a mix. You know, I work a lot on independent films, whether that's short films, short documentaries, but mostly independent. And then I do some commercials as well. I do some podcast mixing, some TV work. It's a little bit of everything. It's just like it depends on the time of the year.
Okay, so let's talk a little about the independent industry in Miami, because I feel like our indie films have really been growing and there's a lot of stuff happening. Are you making a living from making indie films? Is it more of doing favors for people? What does that kind of world look like? What do those budgets look like?
So in my case, I live just from doing sound, and then I teach part-time at NIFA, but I'll only go sometimes like once or twice a week. So it's mostly just loyal sound. And indie films, you know, they don't have the budget of a big production, but you can still make a living. You know, I feel like at least my rate, it's 600 plus 350 for equipment for sound mixing. And then I quote post based on the project. So what I'll do is I'll have to see the project to be able to know how much I'm going to charge them. Because people will say, yeah, the dialogue's recorded great. And then when I hear it, you know, I have to do a bunch of processing. So what I'll do is I'll tell them to send it to me. And then just by hearing at it and knowing how long it's going to be, I'll get an idea of how. But normally for post, I'll do like a flat rate.
I love that you mentioned numbers. I think people are so scared to be like, this is my rate. And, you know, it's negotiable depending on the budget of the project. But I think not enough people are honest about that. It makes it really hard for producers to budget. It's hard for you to figure out how much you have to raise because it's all a guessing game. And I think being transparent about that kind of stuff just makes it easier for you to keep your rate as a freelancer in Miami and like be like, this is what it costs and it doesn't change. Whether I give you a deal or not is a different story.
Everybody's different. In that sense, some people like they don't negotiate rates. In my case, I'm an independent documentary director, so I know what it's like, you know, to find that financing. So I will negotiate depending on the project, depending on who it is, depending on the type of work it is. You know, if it's maybe we're doing a documentary on a topic that I really love, you know, and so, you know, I'll basically based on that up to a certain point. But I feel like Miami, you know, there's also a lot of commercial stuff. Nowadays, I'm doing a lot of work for people that come and film here from LA, New York, and then they find me online or, you know, websites like Production Hub. There's a bunch of websites nowadays that if you do the work and it's good, you know, you'll stay busy.
Is that mostly local stuff? And then the LA and New Yorkers that come down are finding you online? Or are they also getting you from word of mouth?
It's a mix. It's also word of mouth. So, for example, next month, we should be shooting a documentary. And then they're in LA, but they contacted me through Kevin Contento, who I've worked with a bunch of times here.
Kevin, another indie director here in Miami?
Yeah. And so, you know, it's one of those things that if your word is good and you're reliable, people trust you. You know, I feel like you are your own brand. So if your brand is good and solid, people are gonna go to you. It's like if you like a coffee shop in Miami, you might be in Broward, but if that coffee is really good, you're gonna make that trip, you know? So, you know, that's the reason why you need to be an asset for productions or for whatever you're doing. If you're an asset, you can bring value to a production, you're going to stay busy.
Do you find that there's any difference between the productions and the crew that you work with that are local versus the ones that come in from New York and LA and other places?
From time to time, yeah.
Good or bad?
I mean, the crews that I work here locally, everybody's just so chill. You know, and it's like family. Most of the times that I'm working here on set, it's because I feel like the industry in Miami, it's fairly small to a point where like you kind of know, you know, once you start working, you kind of know everybody. But it's like some sets is like family. Like everybody's on a mission, everybody's doing what they do. but there's no stress. Like everybody's working towards the same goal. And so it's like a perfect working machine.
This episode is sponsored by Unique Producer Service is South Florida's premier grip and lighting house. In business over 50 years, they have the experience to help you along the way, whether this is your first rental or your 100th. If you need to come test out lights before you shoot, need equipment delivered, or you need a full crew, Unique has got you covered. You can visit their website at uniqueproducers.com or call them at 305-681-7627. Nestled between Miami and the Florida Keys lies an enchanted and tranquil estate. Palm Lodge House and Tropical Garden is a historic 2-acre property from 1912. Its old Florida-inspired decor is intended to transport you back over 100 years with old-world charm everywhere you look. The spacious 2-story, 3-bedroom house features an expansive porch, a high-ceiling foyer, a grand piano, and an outdoor living room, and is surrounded by lush tropical gardens with seashell walkways throughout. And it is the perfect place for your next shoot or event. So when did you decide to transition into directing your own films? Because now you've started directing your own documentaries.
Yeah, so I really love documentaries. I'm obsessed with them. And once I'm obsessed with something, I'm screwed. And so I was like, I would love to tell my own stories, but it's scary because I don't do video and, I don't direct. And so I did Gearheads.
Which you can now see on our YouTube channel, Miami Film Lab.
Yeah, that was the first one. And it was scary and frustrating at times because like now, when I get a project and I'm mixing it, the story is there. It's edited. Now I need to decide what's going to be said, where it's going to be said, so it was a whole different game. But I got over my, at one point I told him like when we were editing, because I would get frustrated. How do we get this interview from 2 hours to, 10, 15 minutes? At one point I called him and I was like, bro, this might not be great. It might not be good. It might suck, but we're going to finish it. And so when we finished, it was like, it was really good because, we got over the fear of failing basically. And going from sound to directing, it was just one of those things where like, I need to tell my own stories. I need to use my voice. And this is burning inside, this passion for documentary. I'm going to make it even if I fail.
Okay, so let's tell everyone a little bit about what Gearheads is about and how that story came to you.
Yeah, so Gearheads is about a local company that makes and fixes audio equipment, which is called Browner Sound, and it's Omar and Naomi. And I met them through another great director, which is Jorge Gonzalez Gropera. We played music, for a few years, and they used to play together in a band. And so I knew Omar because he fixes equipment for a bunch of people here in Miami. Since, I work with audio, and his story is very fascinating. They work with nonprofits and it's a small company. So like, I know what that's like to have a small company. And I was like, can I tell your story? And he was always super supportive. And so we did that. We shot the interviews and then we did the B-roll and we made it happen. Flor also helped me from WAC, edit the piece, Flor Portieri. And that was one thing that I was going to tell you before is that as a freelancer, I feel like each year that passes by, it's better. So it does take time. It does take time. I just opened my studio. I mean, in a commercial space. I had it at home before, but it was still a good studio. And I founded Loyal Sound in 2015. So that has been, 8 years? So it does take time, to get clients and to get people to know you.
Do you feel like it's been a steady rise or does it kind of ebb and flow?
I feel like it's been a steady ride, but some months are slower than others. So, at least for me, ad agencies normally take vacations during summer. So then commercials would kind of slow down.
Also, who wants to be on set when it's 90 degrees outside?
Yeah. So last year I did a golf shooting and I did one in the Everglades also in summer, which was tricky, but it's good. I like to be out. So yeah, I feel like it just takes time. If you're patience is everything. Like I could have quit 5 years ago and go do something else, making more money. But now I'm really happy that I didn't, because I make more money than if I would have quit at the time. It's just those 4 years I had to, stay patient.
So
you know what I'm saying?
What has been kind of your biggest success as a freelancer? Like, what was that turning point where you went from like struggling to get people to hire you to getting consistent work? Like, was there something that kind of turned the corner? Like one project or
no, I feel like
something
it's
that changed about how you...
I don't know how you say this in English, but trabajo hormiguita. Like you take one thing and you take it
Just
up
keep
and
going.
then you take another one. And yeah, definitely not a project that like people started calling me more. And I'm thankful, knock on wood, that some of the projects that I've worked on have had a lot of success. But it's been, just hard work throughout all these years.
Is there a favorite project you've worked on that you're just really proud of your sound design?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. There's a lot of them.
You can just say yours.
Yeah, no, I like working. So with that also comes sacrifices.
Yeah.
January 1st, I was in the studio mixing while people were at home,
Hungover.
in lots of hours. A 17-hour day is not crazy for me in the studio. So
And how does the dedication to working those long hours change now that you become a dad?
it's changed. So I work crazier hours because I want to be present for my son and my wife, and my family is everything to me. So definitely family first and then my work. So I'll be a lot at home, during the day, and then I'll go and work at night, for example, until, 4 or 5 a.m. It's not like I've been sleeping well anyway. But yeah, I mean, now that he's a baby, it's kind of difficult because, you have to be there the whole time. Let's see what happens when he starts going to school.
Because he's still tiny, right?
Yeah, he's a year and a half. Yeah.
Fun age.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found the productions are friendly to the fact that you have a kid or
No, I
you
just have to
do the thing?
Yeah, I can't. It's really hard for me to turn down work. So like, even if I have a project and I have my guys busy, I'll find a way to bring someone else on board. I feel like I'm at a point where I might have to get someone to do internship at the studio, and I want to train more people, because I feel like I'm at the point where I can start bringing more people to Loyal Sound, and I would love to have some of my ex-students, give them an opportunity. They're very talented kids. But yeah, I mean, I'll only turn down work if the pay is not right. Yeah, but like, that to me is like, I don't turn down work. Yeah.
Is it because you're worried that there isn't going to be more work later, or just like, people need...
I feel like it's because...
You don't want to FOMO, you don't want to miss out on working on a great project.
I lived in Europe at a time in Spain that the crisis was going on, like the economical crisis. So I had a really bad time over there, like really bad time, to a point where like you couldn't find a job doing anything. And so like, to me, work is a blessing. I don't mind doing 17 hours in my studio, sound designing or mixing something. I love working. Like, to me, a Saturday, I go to the studio every day. I might take a day off, which is really weird. But even if I take a day off, I'll be sending an email or making an invoice, or something, contacting someone. I like working. So to me, it's like, once I change that ship of like, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, it's just been, it's good.
So what's your big advice for someone who wants to get into sound?
My advice is figure it out. Don't wait for people to open doors for you. You open your own doors. Because I've been doing post for 14 years. I've been doing production audio for like 4 years. And I kind of got in as a mistake because the owner of the studio, I work for other studios as well. But one of those studios, the owner was like, hey, I have a commercial, you want to come and help with sound, but I had never done it before. This was like 2019 maybe. And so I did that. I went, I helped him. And the year later, I got my equipment. And I was like, I like being on set. I'm going to give it a shot. But I had never done, production audio. So it's a whole different thing in the studio. I knew recording. I knew how to get the levels because, I recorded in the studio. But a whole different, a whole different set of problems. Now we're dealing with rustle. Now we're dealing with acoustics. We're dealing with noise. So I had to learn that. All right. So when I transitioned to production audio, in that side, I didn't really have any mentors. I had to figure it out myself. But I wasn't afraid to fail. So I did mistakes. I still make mistakes.
Producer was glad that she didn't know you weren't scared to fail.
Yeah, I mean, because I do post, I feel like that has really helped me because I reverse engineer. So thankfully, I feel like I haven't done a bad film on the recording side yet. Thankfully, but last year I did a feature and I learned a lot from that. It was 4 weeks recording, and so it was almost like going to college. Because some productions will be 1 day if you're doing a commercial. Some will be maybe 5-6 days. But 4 weeks straight, it's a lot. So that to me was like going to college for production audio. Even though I was doing the sound mixing, but it came out great. For that film, we didn't have to do any ADR, which is a blessing.
That is unheard of.
Yeah.
That's
we
good
had
job.
to record 2 lines. It was basically them hugging and talking, which is fine. But the fact that we did a feature, it sounds good and there's no ADR, means to me that we did a good job.
Does that mean you want to spend more time on set, or you still like post more?
I feel like I like working on set more because it's dynamic and every set is different. So you can never get too comfortable. There's always different sets of, you always have to be active. With post, it can be a lot of, especially if you're sound designing, it's very time consuming. So, I mean, I still like post, but it really depends on the project.
Do you have any one big advice to give on-set sound mixers as a post person that like you really wish sound mixers would either start or stop doing to make your life in post easier?
Yes. Mic placement is everything, and get that mic the closest you can. But I feel like from the producer's perspective, sometimes I wish they would bring us more into pre-production, because some of the locations that they choose are very noisy.
Yeah.
And so if we knew that in advance, maybe we could say something, figure out a way in which it looks good, but it also sounds, fairly decent. Some locations are just, sometimes you just have to do ADR. If you need to have wind blowing and you have an industrial fan, or you have generators, that makes noise. Everything makes noise. Microphones are very sensitive. So when you get to post and you hear it in the studio, it's like, oh, maybe we should have thought of this better. But, yeah.
Is there any advice you would get to casting crews to be nicer to sound people and be more considerate of things that like most people don't pay attention to, that you're like, but people, this makes noise. You know this.
I wish that landscaping was illegal in Miami. And I'm sure they have a camera in my house when I'm leaving to set. Every time, I swear to God, every time we're about to record, they start doing landscaping on the house next to it. That's a classic. But I sometimes when you're on set, some people, like, especially if it's, let's say we're shooting interior in a house, there's people outside, sometimes they're talking. So, that can be tricky. But most people know that, you have to stay quiet. And so it just really depends on the set.
So what's next for you, for either Loyal Sound or as you as a director? What are your next big plans you're looking forward to? So
I would like to direct more documentaries. And I'm finishing my second short documentary right now. It's in post, it's filmed. So, I want to do a festival run with that and hopefully direct more. And then Loyal Sound is my baby. So I'm never going to leave that, hopefully. Knock on wood. And you just, want to keep getting projects, bringing more people on board and, helping my sound community.
Nice. Yeah. So any other words of wisdom you want to leave people with before we wrap up?
I mean, I'll tell you what works for me is the harder I work, the better I do. That's a math that to me hasn't failed. And I've seen it with people, discipline. Sometimes I don't want to go to a studio, but I have to go because those projects are not going to mix themselves. And, I feel like if you do your work and you do what you love, people, feed from that. And so, just keep doing what I do until as much as I can, hopefully.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your insights on working here in South Florida.
Yeah.
Let everyone know how to find you and where to find your work.
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram at Dan_Abrusci, which is ABRUSCI, and then Instagram Loyal Sound. And my website's danabrusci.com. And if you guys have any sound questions, you can call me. You can send me an email. Anything. I love sound. So, some people will be like, hey, is this mic good? Some people, sound is tricky. I know that. So, anything.
Is there one piece of equipment you think every sound person should have?
Yes. DPA 6060 lavalier. They're expensive. I would say the most expensive lavalier, but they sound beautiful.
You should sponsor us at Miami Film Lab.
You should sponsor us and send us at least 5. But no, they're really good. Yeah, they're really good.
Okay, well, fabulous. Thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
This was fun.
I appreciate it.
This episode is a production of Miami Film Lab, a nonprofit production company supporting local filmmakers as they work to make a living telling Miami stories. It was produced by Joe Turman and myself, Jen Orta Castellanos, and was recorded at Unicorn Fire Studios. Jed Royer at Royer Design made our logos. Our music is by Ola Hai. You can subscribe to Crew Crawl 305 on your preferred podcast platform. And if you like what you heard, leave a comment or review. And if you want to support our work, you can make a tax-deductible donation at miamifilmlab.org. Thanks so much for listening.